Hello and welcome to Rand Class. This week I'll be talking a bit about the coronavirus. It might be late to join in on the talk about corona, but I want to join in now. I want to talk about some history and some sad trends that have come during the coronavirus and some other stuff. And the reason I'm joining in now is we have to face corona will stick around for some time. And I can see how corona is spreading among kids, and I work with kids, so I see it a lot. So firstly, I will start by going back in time. If you listen to my podcast, you know I love history. And I want to go back to World War One. And if you are a doctor or historian, you might know about a pandemic that hit us during World War One called the Spanish flu. And it was an influenza that spread during the war, at the end of the war, where soldiers traveled home. And it is called the Spanish flu even though it didn't originate in Spain. Studies find it originated in the USA. But since the papers were censored for the warring countries and it wasn't in Spain, it was reported first in Spain by the news and thereby given the name the Spanish flu. But this event was an illness that spread around the world, killing a lot of people. But we did learn a lot from it. We did learn that self-isolation and masks and clean hands are good to try and curb it all. And it actually did work. A lot of places were running down the numbers of people getting infected. And then some smart people decided to have a victory parade, and then it all started all over again. And for some reason, since it's only been around 100 years since, we have forgotten everything we learned from that. And what's even more weird is some people who see the data, the facts, and the history, and they still don't believe what the facts are today, even though some of the facts were actually proven when we had the Spanish flu. So what could have been learned from that could have made this pandemic an easier thing to deal with, and we could have learned from our past lives. But for some reason, people didn't want to learn and people didn't want to believe. Unless they wanted to believe in some weird stuff. But it wasn't all bad during this pandemic. We actually saw some innovations come through. A lot of people were able to work from home, and we found out that it could actually be doable. And it made the workplace much more flexible if the workplace actually accepts that people are still allowed to work from home. And we also saw how shops adapted so that you could now order stuff from home and get it delivered to your door. Or you can let the shop shop it for you and then deliver it to your car. So you actually reduce the number of people that you interact with in your daily life. We have also been able to make the vaccine process so much faster and better, since they are now able to do a lot of the stuff at the same time instead of in a linear way it was before. So it speeds up the process, and of course they found new techniques to actually make the vaccine faster and better. But sadly, social sites and some news outlets have been living high on this pandemic by telling lies and making people believe in stuff that makes no sense. And sadly, there has been no consequence around it. And some of the stuff that they have been telling that people now believe in, or some people believe in, are truly mind-bending for me. Like, I just can't get my head wrapped around these theories. I'm only going to jump into one of them. But there's a lot of them out there. And sadly, some of them are still killing people or making it easier for people to get sick and then die. But this one is about masks. How when basically every country in the rich nations said you have to wear a mask everywhere to make sure that you're safe and people around you are safe. Then a lot of people saw it as an attack on their rights to freedom. And for some reason, some people began to believe that the masks were actually bad for you to use. Like they said, you could die from using a mask, getting sick. And as soon as I saw a lot of people saying this, I was like, but there's doctors and nurses and dentists and so on that use masks every day and they don't have a problem. I don't understand how some people can believe that using a mask will kill you. But sadly, as I said, social media has been an easy way to make people believe lots of weird stuff. And they do know how to keep hearing the same thing over and over again. So you begin to believe that you're actually right in believing what you believe. Because if you keep getting the same news from the same news bubble, then in the end you will begin to believe what you hear. It is basically propaganda one-on-one. And what's even more sad is it basically takes them to die for the coronavirus before the family goes like, oh, maybe we were wrong. Maybe this was actually a good thing. Maybe we should have been vaccinated, you know. And it's sad that people have to die before people will admit that maybe coronavirus actually is real. Maybe there's some merit to getting a vaccine. All I can say is the people I know who had the virus, I am happy that they can live today and they don't have any major problems or disabilities that the virus could actually give them. And this is something we really need to look at. How do we make this spread of stupidity and bad ideas and news stop? Since it's really doing harm. It has done a lot of harm here. When people have died from something that there were no reason to die from, and have made the place harder for the people who did follow the rules. And it's really something we need to look into for when the next time arrives. And we really need to look at how did this happen? What allowed this to happen? Because the spread of false information is really dangerous. As I tell the kids often, is don't believe everything you hear on YouTube or see on Facebook or Instagram. And if you say, but you're on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, yeah, sure, don't believe me either, because you don't know where I get the data from. But I do try to actually look at my data and find the data that most people actually confirm is real. But if you are unsure on something, try and find out for yourself afterwards. The next thing we need to learn from this is to look at all countries in the world and what they did during the pandemic. What worked, what didn't work, what worked for a rich nation, what worked for a poor nation. How can we learn from all of this? Because then we can actually begin to look at a better strategy for the next time this will happen, and actually have the strategy ready so next time it does happen, we already come prepared. Because even though we don't know when it will happen, we know it will happen. And then we have a bit of a leg up on the virus if we actually already have some good infrastructure and strategies at hand. And we do have to remember, because if we go, let's say, 100 years into the future and then the next pandemic come, and they haven't learned from us like we didn't learn from the Spanish flu, well, then we're starting all over again. And if we don't want to learn from history, actually valuable information from history, why are we even recording history then, if we're just gonna take it for granted? And the next thing, we need world leaders to stand up about what is going on and to be honest, so the world don't have to wait for a new virus to spread around the world before some nation actually say, oh yeah, we have this virus, just so you know it. And we need leaders who will listen to professionals and who will actually keep the infrastructure and all this in place, even though it costs money. Because every time you scrap it and you have to start all over, it's a massive disadvantage for us, but a massive help for whatever virus is coming. And for dear God, please believe the doctors who are telling you stuff. Then the next thing is to not let our wealth of the rich nations let us buy up every vaccine and all the medicine and then go like, oh yeah, now we have it all. And while we do that, we just watch some poor countries burn because they can't afford to pay in advance. They can't afford to actually try and buy out stuff that we have bought. So next time we sure look at our own nations, but we also have to look at the world, how we can help the entire world conquer this. Because if we don't remove it in the entire world, then it will spread again. Just look at something like smallpox. how it was basically eradicated and then came back because some people came from places where it wasn't vaccinated against, and then it spread again. And then the last thing is for all humans in the world is we need to look inwards on ourselves, our needs and our beliefs and all that. And we need to find a way to fulfill our needs without putting other people in danger, without having to be so stubborn that you rather want some poor cashier to get a deadly virus because you just don't want to put a mask on, even though you have been asked politely to do it 100 times. And we need to remember that this is still human people we are dealing with, and we need to treat them with respect always. So look inwards and think to yourself, have I done it worse, or have I actually been able to do it okay during this pandemic? I do hope we learn from all of this, and I do hope that the next time we won't have conspiracy theories spreading faster than the virus itself. But if you have any ideas about how or what we can learn from all of this, please join me in a conversation on my social sites. You can find me on Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. And if you like this episode, then go listen to my look at pro and anti-vaccination. And you can find that on all podcast sites and YouTube. I wish you all a very nice day.